Marcus Lane thought he'd found the perfect loophole in airline security until a single envelope hidden in a seat pocket turned his dream trip into a mid-air cybercrime investigation and a lifetime ban from Spirit Airlines. It began on a humid summer afternoon at Orlando International Airport, the kind of day where the air feels heavy and the terminals are buzzing with restless travelers. Security cameras scanned the crowds as passengers hustled toward gates, but one figure stood out to the trained eyes of airport surveillance operators. A man in a neon yellow hoodie moved with the deliberate pace of someone who didn't want to seem hurried yet was clearly on a mission. He dragged a battered suitcase so worn it looked as though it had been through a dozen countries, with layers of duct tape wrapped unevenly around the edges to keep it from falling apart. His name was Marcus Lane, though his ID would later turn out to be one of several he carried. To most people, Marcus was just another budget traveler trying to save a few dollars. To the handful of investigators who would eventually look into his background, he was a person with a history of low-level fraud, harmless enough to avoid serious prison time, yet calculated enough to exploit loopholes wherever he found them. Marcus had booked the cheapest ticket Spirit Airlines offered. No bags, no assigned seat, and no extra services. His record showed no previous incidents with the airline, no reason for staff to expect trouble. Yet there was something about him that caught attention, perhaps the way he kept scanning the area, or how he seemed to be mentally counting the steps between security and the boarding gate. In his suitcase, underneath a thin layer of clothes, he had concealed items that would make this flight memorable for all the wrong reasons. Among them was an envelope, neatly sealed and marked with nothing to suggest importance, yet inside it rested something that could cause chaos in the airline's operations. While passengers shuffled in lines, juggling phones and boarding passes, Marcus kept to himself, leaning against a wall and watching the gate agents with quiet intensity. Every time one of them looked his way, he adjusted his stance, trying to appear casual. His boarding group wouldn't be called for some time, but he seemed impatient, glancing at the monitors as if calculating how much longer he'd have to wait. If anyone had been close enough to see, they might have noticed the faint smirk forming at the corner of his mouth, a sign that whatever he was planning, he believed he was about to pull it off without a hitch. The terminal noise swelled with the calls for other flights, oblivious to the fact that Marcus Lane's presence was about to turn an ordinary trip into a federal investigation. The first sign of trouble came long before the plane's doors closed. Marcus moved toward the gate as if he belonged in the next boarding group, ignoring the zone number printed on his ticket. His suitcase, already suspicious in appearance, was also far too large to qualify as a free carry-on. Spirit Airlines staff, well accustomed to spotting oversized bags, quickly noticed. One agent stepped forward to stop him, but Marcus shifted direction without hesitation, sliding into a cluster of passengers waiting near the gate podium. From there, he positioned himself so that when boarding began, he could blend in with those who had paid for early access. It was a trick Marcus had used before: move with the crowd, avoid direct interaction, and let the chaos of boarding work in his favor. However, his plan was already unraveling. The gate agents had quietly flagged his name in the system, noting that his ticket included no carry-on allowance. They also remembered his earlier glances toward the boarding area, the kind of nervous watching that often preceded a problem. Two staff members began whispering to each other, debating whether to call airport security before the boarding process went any further. As the agents discussed their options, Marcus unzipped his bag just a few inches and slipped out a thick, sealed envelope. His movements were quick but not frantic, the kind that wouldn't draw much attention unless you were looking directly at him. He walked toward the waiting area by the windows, passing a row of empty seats, and slid the envelope deep into the seat pocket of an unoccupied row. To an unsuspecting traveler, it might have looked like he was stashing reading material for later. In reality, that envelope was the centerpiece of what he had planned for this flight. The cameras above captured everything. From Marcus's arrival at the gate to the moment he tucked the envelope away, every detail was recorded. Still, the gate crew didn't act immediately. They were caught in the uncertainty of not knowing exactly what they had just seen. Was it an innocent act, or something more sinister? Marcus, meanwhile, returned to his place in the boarding crowd, adjusting his hoodie and glancing at the overhead monitors as if nothing had happened. By the time his group was called, the envelope was already in position, waiting to be discovered thousands of feet above the ground. It was the kind of move that looked small in the moment, but would soon spiral into an operation involving federal agents, airline security, and a band that would make Marcus infamous. 30 minutes after takeoff, the cabin had settled into the usual rhythm of a budget flight, passengers scrolling through their phones, others leaning against windows, some flipping through magazines from the seat pockets. A flight attendant making a routine sweep noticed something unusual in one of the empty rows near the back. Inside the seat pocket, pushed deep behind the safety information card, was a thick envelope. At first, it seemed like it might belong to a forgetful passenger from an earlier leg of the trip. But when she pulled it out, the weight and texture didn't match anything ordinary. It was heavier, the paper thick and unnaturally crisp. She carried it discreetly to the galley and opened it. Inside was a neatly stacked set of airline vouchers, each designed to look exactly like Spirit's official travel credits. The printing was flawless, logos perfectly aligned, serial numbers in a believable range, but something about them felt off. There were far too many, and their total value was staggering. The attendant quickly counted over $50,000 worth. Tucked between the vouchers was a small, unmarked flash drive. The discovery set off a quiet chain reaction among the crew. They alerted the captain, who made the decision to secure the envelope until landing. The vouchers alone could represent a massive fraud, but the presence of the flash drive added a new level of concern. No one could guess what it contained: sensitive documents, stolen data, or something that could compromise the airline's operations. While the crew worked discreetly, Marcus sat in his seat several rows away, scrolling on his phone as though nothing had changed. Hidden inside the pocket of his hoodie was a second flash drive, identical in appearance to the one in the envelope. This one held stolen employee login credentials from multiple airlines, including Spirit. It was his real prize data that could be used to issue legitimate tickets, bypass payment systems, and manipulate reservations without triggering suspicion. Marcus connected a small device to his phone, using the in-flight Wi-Fi to attempt a secure upload of the stolen information. He worked in short bursts, keeping the screen tilted away from nearby passengers. What he didn't know was that Spirit's cybersecurity team on the ground had already detected the unusual network activity. The digital trail was beginning to close in on him, even as the plane sailed calmly toward Las Vegas. What started as a hidden envelope in an empty row was now transforming into a live cybercrime investigation in midair. By the time the plane touched down in Las Vegas, the situation had already escalated beyond Marcus's control. Spirit's cybersecurity team had traced the suspicious data transferred directly to his assigned seat number. The in-flight network logs showed repeated attempts to access restricted airline systems, all originating from his device during the flight. This wasn't a random red flag, it was a clear and deliberate breach. The captain had been informed midair, and while no announcement was made to avoid alarming passengers, a quiet alert was sent to federal authorities on the ground. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, Marcus appeared calm, scrolling through his phone and occasionally glancing at the window as if eager to start his Vegas trip. What he didn't see were the plainclothes agents already positioned just beyond the jet bridge, waiting for the signal to move in. The seatbelt sign went off, and passengers began standing, collecting their bags, and lining the aisle. Marcus reached for his oversized carry-on, still patched with duct tape, unaware that this would be the last time he touched it as a free man. The lead agent stepped on board before any passengers could exit, walking directly to Marcus's row. Without raising his voice or causing a scene, he ordered Marcus to stand. The sudden change in atmosphere was impossible to ignore. Nearby travelers froze mid-motion, clutching their belongings as the agents flanked him. His bag was taken immediately, and he was escorted down the aisle toward the waiting jet bridge, his neon hoodie making him impossible to miss in the narrow passageway. Once inside the gate area, security personnel from Spirit Airlines joined the scene. They had been briefed and came prepared with documentation officially banning Marcus from ever boarding one of their flights again. His name and photo were entered into the airline's internal do not board list on the spot, an action that could be shared with partner carriers if needed. The suitcase was opened in the presence of both agents and airline representatives, revealing not just the counterfeit vouchers but multiple forged IDs, a compact Wi-Fi hacking tool, and a set of printed boarding passes for future flights under different names. What Marcus had thought would be a routine disembarkation into the flashing lights of Las Vegas had instead become a walk into the custody of federal law enforcement. The slot machines and neon signs he expected to see were replaced by the muted beige walls of an airport interrogation room. His carefully constructed scam had ended the moment the wheels touched the runway. The investigation into Marcus's activities moved quickly once agents had the contents of his suitcase and the data from his devices. Forensic analysis of the flash drives confirmed the scope of his operation. He had been stealing airline employee login credentials for months, using them to create legitimate-looking tickets and travel credits. The counterfeit vouchers found in the envelope were only part of his strategy. The real money came from selling discounted flights to customers who thought they were getting a secret deal, never realizing their tickets were purchased with stolen access. Spirit Airlines had unknowingly been his most frequent target, but traces of similar fraud appeared in records from at least 2 other budget carriers. Investigators uncovered that Marcus used a network of online classifieds and encrypted messaging apps to advertise his services, his clients often seeking last-minute cheap travel, paid in cash or cryptocurrency, making the transactions harder to trace. In return, Marcus would provide them with booking confirmations that looked indistinguishable from legitimate purchases. Many of those flights had already been taken without incident, which meant his scam had been profitable for over a year before anyone caught on. The flash drives contained more than just login credentials. They held employee schedules, training manuals, and procedural documents that could be used to impersonate airline staff. The inclusion of such material hinted that Marcus might have been planning an even larger fraud operation, one that could bypass more than just ticketing systems. The presence of the portable Wi-Fi hacking tool in his luggage also suggested he was experimenting with intercepting in-flight communications, a move that could have opened the door to far more dangerous exploits. Prosecutors built their case quickly, charging Marcus with wire fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to protected systems. While the counterfeit vouchers were serious enough, the digital evidence strengthened the charges, making it nearly impossible for him to claim innocence. Spirit Airlines issued a public statement confirming his permanent ban and commending the quick coordination between their security team, the flight crew, and federal authorities. Marcus never made it beyond the airport that day. Instead of walking down the Las Vegas Strip, he was transported in the back of a patrol vehicle, watching the city's glowing skyline fade through the reinforced glass. The same impulsive confidence that carried him through airport gates and boarding lines had finally collapsed under the weight of a crime too complex to hide. The fastest way to get banned had turned into a one-way ticket to a federal courtroom.